got sacked by the Romans.
Yeah. Well, at some point, you know who the first Christian Roman emperor was? Constantine. And then shortly thereafter, well, that was at the end, sort of at the end of the Roman period. But afterwards, Theodosius made it the official religion of the Roman Empire. Right? And you know, when a philosophical or a religious, well, almost any kind of ideology matches up or is congruent with the political system, like, in other words, if the ideology drives the political system, what happens to other ideas? An idea that runs contrary to the ideology automatically runs contrary to the state, if the ideology and the state match up. So what you see in philosophy from about that time period, from about the 5th century AD, all the way up into, well, past the Renaissance era, past the 15th century. But for about 1,000 years, you see art, culture, philosophy, you know, almost everything in the West, you know, just dominated by the Judeo-Christian tradition. Meaning that what you see in art, the content and theme, mainly religious in nature. And the philosophy too. So, you know, when we talk about this time period, we talk about, especially in the West, when you talk about the Judeo-Christian tradition, what does that include?
Jewish tradition? Judaism?
Judaism, Islam, Christianity, in all of their various forms. Right? What is the concept of God in the Judeo-Christian tradition? What are the attributes of God in the Judeo-Christian tradition?
He's all powerful, all seeing.
Yeah, we've got, well, often enough, God is a he. There's a gender. But, God is omnipotent, omnipotent. All powerful. And what you probably have to do is add something like, you know, to do things, or say, can do anything logically possible. Because otherwise, if you don't add something like that, you run into some issues like, can God make a round square? You know, which doesn't make sense, because by definition, if it's round, it's not a square. If it's square, it's not. Or, can God make a rock he can't make? If he can take such a rock, then there's something you can't do. They lift it. If you can't make it, then there's something you can't do. They make that. Or can God kill himself permanently? Or stuff like that. So usually you would have to add something like, can God make it logically possible? Say that the other stuff is in some ways nonsensical. What else? Omnipotent.
All seeing.
Yeah,
That's
or
omnipotent.
omniscient. All knowing. And you could ask a question, past, present, and future. Because then, this is important to say, does God know all the past and all the present, or all the past, all the present, and the future? Because if God knows the future, then there's questions that you have to address by the points that we can determine. Because then if God knows that, I'm going to grab a pen. If he knew that 50,000 years ago that I was going to grab a pen, then it seems like I couldn't have done otherwise. Else I could have psyched him out. Oh, he thought I was going to the pen trick. So there's a question of determinism that comes up when we talk about the future. Different people address that in different ways. So we try to solve that. Omnipotent, omniscient, benevolent. Sometimes people will put an omni in front of that. A little bit, omnibenevolent. All good. Usually, creator. But also transcendent. One of the things that means is, distinct, from creation. Personal. Personal God. Gets involved and talks to people and such. Eternal or everlasting. Now, eternal means exists outside of time. Everlasting means, never ending. There's two distinctions that people might make. Usually this is the one. Existing outside of time. One of the reasons is to try to solve the puzzle of the. Any questions about that? Do you see the difference between everlasting and eternal? There's also a sort of anthropomorphism, right? There you'll find things, things saying like, jealous God, or creating in his image. Vengeful or other words, but you'll see things that there's a shared element of characteristics with human feelings, human goals, etc. Various degrees. Some versions of the Judeo-Christian tradition, reject the anthropomorphic idea and say that, such a thing is, allegorical, conventional. Any questions about this? Again, very different from the Eastern philosophies or Eastern religions. Don't get me wrong, there's a ton, almost innumerable religious traditions. And it would be impossible for us to go through and, discuss them all and compare and all of that. Things, ranging from no personal gods or no gods at all, to, some things like there's a God in everything, animism, or whatever that, like there's a God in my phone, and in my pen, and in my computer. Well, why do you think we focus often enough in a philosophy class, especially an intro to philosophy class, on the Judeo-Christian tradition? Well, just because of that historical element. So philosophy done, anywhere between 500 AD and 1500 AD, heavily influenced by the Judeo-Christian tradition, because that was the dominant religion. Those were the dominant religions in the area. So people wrote about. And what you have in the Renaissance, like going back to Raphael's School at Athens, and I had told you that the early Christian church was very much fond of Plato, because Plato's ideas sort of fit that idealism. If we talk about like the Crusades, the Crusades in a way helped spark the Renaissance. It helped spark science and the Enlightenment. I mean, what when people's armies go over somewhere else, what do they bring back with them? New ideas. Yeah. They might bring back the spoils of war. They might bring back or take with them disease. Right? But they bring back ideas. And so what you have, because in the East, if you have in the, for example, in the Arab world, in that time period, you have, Aristotle and these other philosophies still surviving, and they were, in many ways rediscovered and brought back. And so the School at Athens here is that depiction of all of these ideas coming together and sparking, all kinds of new thought. Thought reflects itself in art. You have the Renaissance in not just Italy and the Netherlands and elsewhere. But anyway, so that's why, we do like an intro to philosophy class or a philosophy of religion class. It's going to be lopsided in the Judeo-Christian tradition, because you've got a 1,000-year time period where, well, that's all people wrote about in philosophy. And so what happens is, people tend to write, if they're writing, even if they're writing something new, they're writing in the context of what happened before. And even today, as much of an egalitarian society we are, you know, in the West here, we are still heavily influenced by this Judeo-Christian tradition. You know, whether you're talking about Judaism, Islam, or any form of Christianity, you know, this is basically what you're talking about. And so, how do you take a philosophical approach to religion? Well, maybe we should do this. And I don't know if we did this yet. We drew up some circles and talked about the difference between philosophy, science, and religion. Did we do that? Let's go to Venn diagram, right? We got some concentric circles here. They imply participation. So let's say that this circle represents participation. This is science. What does this diagram imply?
They have stuff in common.
Yeah, there are things they have in common, things they don't have in common. So we could say, like, one thing that they might all have in common is they all want to explain things to us. They all want to explain things to us. But they have different methodologies. What's the methodology of science?
Scientific method.
Evil experimentation, empiricism. What's the method of philosophy?
Thinking.
How does religion generally justify
Stories on behavior.
Morality,
well, what's it based on?
faith.
Well, usually it's faith-based. Now, to different people, that might mean different things. For some people, it might mean continued belief with, I don't know, a suggestion, justification, or even evidence, or even for some people, in the face of contrary evidence. That is objective. Science, its claims, are technical. Science is not in the business of making true claims. Its claims are technical, knowing that a better explanation, maybe something with more predictive power, something that has more empirical evidence, that has fits more into the accepted framework. Philosophy's claims are mostly technical. I say mostly technical because you have to have some kind of framework. But if somebody comes up with a better argument, well, it's like science. You know, the history of science is just replete with hypotheses and theories being discarded in favor of better ones. But there's an assumption of progress here. Religion makes truth claims with a capital P. People don't say things like, you know, I'll hear people saying something like Jesus Christ is my Savior, as long as empirical evidence. That's why I think, you know, when they tell you there's a couple things you should talk about, politics and religion. Well, one of the reasons, you know, for politics and religion, you know, it's telling you things like who you are and what you should or shouldn't do in many ways. But part of it is this. There's more on the chopping block here. Here's an example. let's say, I don't know, me and my friend, you invite me and my friend Scott to a party. And, I say, oh, I will so be there. I'm definitely gonna be there. And my friend Scott says, I'll probably be there. Neither of us show up. Who are you more upset with?
You.
Why?
You said you were
You
gonna be
said
there.
for sure.
Well, that's the same sort of sentiment. You make a truth claim here, there's more at stake. If it turns out to be incorrect or wrong. Here, well, if you're not making a truth claim, it's expected, you know, that something's going to, perhaps. To find out where somebody is on this, I mean, you can do something like this, say, you know, let's pretend on one side you have an abundance of empirical evidence that suggests that the religious beliefs are incorrect. Or on the back, it's a logical argument that shows that your religious beliefs entail contradiction. Do you abandon your religious views based on that? Well, if you don't, then you're probably operating in this area. Right? But if you think that you should and do have justification, empirical and logical justification for religious views, then you're probably here. Well, let's stop there. We'll just stop there.